Okay, we're gonna start the panel now. Zan, why would storage encryption matter? Isn't it Microsoft's problem how they secure my data as long as they provide their security guarantees? Why should I care? How do they do it? Zan?
Okay, great question. So basically, why does security matter, and why do you actually have to click the button for transparent disk encryption? So there's two things here, right? So number one is that when you click that button, basically your data gets encrypted on the actual hard drive level of Microsoft, right? So if they throw away your hard disk, right, your data will be encrypted. Okay, so which is great because basically they want it to be kind of unencrypted or they throw it away. So that's the main thing for storage, right? I'm not sure actually around performance impact, how much of a performance issue actually it is, I'll be honest. But that's why you normally do it, basically, for hard drive level encryption, to make sure your data doesn't get, basically, when it's thrown away, your data is still quite secure. Second thing as well, by the way, around SQL databases, and that's probably a different question, but it's an important thing, and I think it was quite surprising to me, was that with SQL database, when you enable TDE, it's actually at the connection level, at the driver level. So when you actually connect to the database using your username and password, actually at the mounting level to the database, that's when it decrypts, it encrypts. So if someone jumps on a box and looks at database files, actually they'll still be encrypted. It's only when they actually log in using SQL Server Management or something like that, they actually start decrypting. So that's a great benefit. So if someone from Microsoft jumps on a box, they can't see your files, they can't do anything with the files. They need to have the login information. So it's much stronger when it comes to SQL Server, SQL database, than actual Azure storage.
Exactly what I was going to say. Okay, I'm just going to ask the next question from the Ask Rock Sharp. Glenn, hey Glenn.
Yes, sir.
How
Did I break it?
how to handle testing? How do you handle testing in event-based serverless computing?
Well, everyone knows that testing sucks, right, Roy? I mean, testing in functions. Functions are, so the way we do it, keep it short, is that we develop the functions, we test them locally, we can run them on a local runtime, and we can redirect the triggers and outputs, and we can basically do automated testing, black box testing of the functions with the outputs and inputs by basically just posting data to it. Or we can also do traditional unit testing by pulling functionality out into its own function, sub-function, and just calling that like you would with a regular unit test. So it's not that difficult at all. The problem comes if you have events and you want to test the events as well. But then you can also have local settings, and you can push events to a different event grid or topic when you're doing local testing, if you would like to do that. So who asked that question?
Okay.
You? Okay, come on up.
By the way, Glenn has 2 microphones.
Yeah, one of them isn't working anymore. I think they muted me. I get more alcohol. I don't know if that's good.
You want to move on to the next question, or does he get something for asking a good question?
He gets something. Here you go, sir.
Wow.
Thank you. Good question.
What about the moderators?
You don't get anything.
What about moderators?
You get nothing.
Okay.
You have glasses of beer in front of you. That's what.
Henriksen? How will you create a complex application with serverless pattern? Is it worth doing it?
No. So actually, serverless as of now is only on, you talk about functions and serverless, so I would talk about functions instead. Functions are small, cohesive units, not a big application. If you try to make a huge, complex application out of small, cohesive units that don't really talk to each other, then you're going to have a bad time. So the functions, the way they work right now, are best for the scenarios Zan mentioned as well. Integration services, small calculations, experimentation, those kinds of scenarios is where I see a lot of good fun in functions. Especially where you have part of a business pipeline. I like functions having in those because you can really model the business domain pretty nicely with these little functions coming along, especially with the events between them. But like I said, also in the example I had with the digital twin is not a function app because it has a lot of different concerns. It has a really broad API surface, and it doesn't really lend itself well to that kind of app. So no.
Okay, I'm going to jump between people because this appears to be in the order of the conference events, almost event-based, if you will. Kim and Sander, one of the ideas behind this Scrum was to be able to estimate better the project time. I know that SP estimation sucks, but what do you recommend to estimate fixed price projects, or in general, how long will project take?
The correct answer to that is 42, of course. So one of the issues we have at software estimation is that we try to do it in too much detail. Is that, for instance, if you do story point estimation, it actually doesn't add value if you could just count the stories. So what? Sorry.
Keeping it.
It wasn't important anyway.
Better? So it was some loose. Well, anyway, so basically, software estimation sucks. It does. We're not good at it. This is a very young industry. We might get better over time, but that means in the next 300 years or so. So basically, we all suck. So we should stop doing fixed price projects anyway. I think we should stop doing projects anyway and just build products that actually evolve and in very small steps evolve and get better, which is a very different model. But on estimation, if you do, let's say, story point analysis or you do planning poker, you could all stop doing that anyway because it doesn't add value. The point is, there's something called the law of large numbers. I tried to explain that really briefly during our talk as well. And the law of large numbers says, given, closer to my mouth. So given a good size of things that you want to estimate, say you have 100 work items that you want to estimate, whether that's stories or use cases or whatever you do, and you estimate it on a certain scale, on average, given the fact that the population is big enough, you will end up exactly on the average. So if you have a scale from 1 to 5, estimating 100 items will sort of end you up with an average of 3, right? Which means that basically you could stop spending all the time estimating this stuff and just count them. It's much easier, much better, and it saves you from these planning poker sessions that everybody has, or a t-shirt sizing or whatever you do. So stop estimating anyway. And fixed price, don't do it. Is that a...
Yeah, can I add something? I think what's important in this story is that there are clear boundaries, right? So if you have stories that are, for instance, if you would do planning poker, are 200 points and other stories are 1 point, then this story just blows up in your face.
Yep.
So it only applies when you have stories that are sort of equal of size. And I think that's a good thing to do anyway, because if you have stories that are sort of equal of size, that means you have a very good understanding of what you should build, and you had a very good upfront analysis with an I instead of with an Y, right? I had it wrong in the slide, but you had a very good upfront analysis, and breaking it down into little particles also makes it possible to build it in little particles and to deliver it in little particles, which is a good thing anyway. So that's something you should do anyway. And I also liked, there's this article of a friend of ours, Seb Rose, and he says there are 3 reasons for estimation. And you should really look it up. It's about no estimation doesn't mean no estimation or something. He says one of the reasons is during estimation, you're really refining the requirements. So you're gaining a lot of information. Don't ever stop doing that because you need the information to build the right thing. There's another reason, that's to get the manager kind of an idea how you're performing. You could easily stop doing that because there are other ways to do this. And there's a third reason, that's like fixed price projects, which was the question initially. So if you have to make an estimation, sometimes you just have to, then just count the number of items, learn something about the velocity of each individual item, and then you can have fixed price projects anyway. So that's it.
So, I recently at Microsoft, I learned how to do estimates if you're a developer. So there was this guy like straight from college, new in our team, and he was working on this feature, and then project manager came to him and asked him, hey, so like how's it going? And so when do you think this feature will be ready? And then he's like looking at him and like looking, and then he's like, when I check it in. So that's, then I learned like all my problems solved when you check it in, then the feature is ready and delivered. And this is like such a great answer. You cannot get it wrong. So I recommend all of you treat your project managers this way.
Well, I think how many of you guys are consultants? Are any of you guys consultants at all? 1, 2, okay. Never mind that. Oh, by the way, whoever asked me the previous question, you need to come up here and get chocolate.
It's not fair. I actually have a question. It's not here, but it's related because it's a question about fixed price projects, because that seems to be an issue, obviously.
Fixed price is a lie.
Fixed price is a lie. So yeah, I want to hear your thoughts about fixed price projects.
How
do you manage that in an agile world where you're supposed to do, not just estimation. You want to change scope. You want to change this. You want to change that. And here, a lot of projects that I come across are fixed price, fixed scope, fixed time. What do you do?
So I work as a consultant. We regularly have customers who want a fixed price contract. And I try to tell them that fixed price is a lie. I'm lying to you because I'm saying it's going to cost this much money. You're lying to yourself because you think that is the only expense you're going to have. And we're all lying to each other because we think this estimate we have is going to actually hold, and we still do it. And you basically have to be an asshole throughout the whole period of time afterwards, because you have to invest a lot of work in getting all the requirements down, and you can't do that, so I have to pad the budget. I have to add a risk factor, which is, I'm lying, it's going to cost, I think it's going to cost this much, but I'm going to say it's going to cost this much, because I know I'm not going to get everything. And then we're going to end up in this whole thing with change orders, and no, you can't do that. We have to finish what we're doing before you do this.
That's terrible.
But I really need this thing now. Well, I'm sorry, but we agreed 6 months ago that we were going to make this, and we still have 3 months to go. So screw you, dear customer. And it gets into this really toxic thing where suddenly us and the customer are competing against each other and quarreling about stuff. So I really, really hate it. Unfortunately, a lot of customers still think they have to do that because they got a budget from their manager saying, oh, I want this thing. Fine, you have this amount of money to make it for. And when that money runs out, they're screwed. They don't have any more money.
Yeah. Well, the main problem is that this industry is not suitable for doing fixed price projects. It's basically because too much is changing all the time. The technology is changing, the people are changing, the people are learning, customers make up their mind and come up with new stuff, etc., etc. And that happens all the time. So the whole metaphor of doing fixed price, fixed date, it's the wrong metaphor for this industry, basically. And you see that when we started developing products over projects, is that it's a much better metaphor because so much is changing. There is no way we can actually do this. So basically, it's about educating our clients. It's about telling them you shouldn't be doing this. And they already know that because they have mobile phones as well, which have apps that update themselves every day. And we have the technology to be able to do that, to have products evolve over time and abandon the whole model of this sort of predictable things that are not predictable. We use the wrong metaphors.
So just small injection. You said we're making products instead of projects. I've been starting to use that metaphor with customers, saying you're not getting a project because a project has a start and end date. That's the definition of a project. You're getting a product, which lasts forever, and people are more getting that. Hopefully, yeah. And also, by definition, everything we do has never been done before, because if somebody did it before, we would just buy that thing.
Or copy it.
Or copy it, exactly what they do. So whatever we do, we haven't done this before, so we actually have no idea how long it's going to take.
Yep.
One thing I want to say, I'm going to be a little bit controversial now because I think we're less popular. I think the mentality of it's done when it's done. Personally, I found it really hard, generally working in any business, saying to any boss, it's done when it's done. I don't know, it's me. I found it really difficult to do that because obviously they think, well, you got to know roughly when it's going to be done. So I think it's really important as developers, architects, whatever, is for you to learn some really good key stakeholder management skills to basically like minimize the scope, understand roughly when it's going to be done. So basically, like at some point next week, looking around that, or you can delay the response. I'll get back to you on that, and actually just check it in like an hour later. So I think it's important to understand how to manage stakeholders. I think it's because some mentalities don't adapt or work with it's done when it's done. In world of business, you got to have some kind of understanding of when it's done. I've personally found it quite difficult to work that way. So I think it's different cultures as well, different companies, I suppose. But I think it's an important skill to learn. But yeah.
And I think it's also very important to be consistent at things, because if you're working in a team and many times you run into the situation like, oh yeah, I need this for tomorrow, can you do it? And you're like, well, no, because it's 3 days, right? And then somebody might ask a different person from the team, and this person will be like, oh yeah, sure, right? And then he will do it fast. And of course, when you do something faster than usual, you skip testing because like, come on, like we just need it tomorrow. Like you don't have to write tests for it. Like let's just do it, right? So it's very important to like keep your discipline and make sure that you always overestimate at least times pi. So like take the time like 10 hours times 3.14 and you have very good measure. And then, worst case, like people will say, okay, we not do it, or you will deliver faster. And then they never will be sad because of that, right?
I sort of disagree on some level, but I've just started programming since February, so that could have something to do with it, like 3 weeks. But still, I come from the insurance industry, and I think it's also about risk. So mainly, is the risk at the customer, or is it at the software development company? And you could say adding something to the price is just the premium you're paying for insuring yourself
it's
against delay. It's risk management. And if the customer really wants that, well, who are we to tell him he shouldn't have it? Because I'm kind of risk averse. I'm trying to look into someone who rebuilds my bathroom, and I really like fixed price. And there are people out there who really like fixed price. So I'm not naturally against fixed price, but I think if you're doing fixed price on something that's very innovative, then you're really crazy because you know nothing. But if it's a project in a system that's already matured, then it's just about who has the risk. And I think you can do that. I think we're good enough to do this.
I think you can do that, but I also think that the safety you feel in having a fixed price is a lie. You're lying to yourself when you're saying that is the cost I'm going to have, because it never is.
I think the unfortunate part of human nature is that we like control.
Yeah.
And we like to know when things are going to happen. Basically, for example, actually with blockchain, they struggle in some countries because they actually release blockchain in some countries, right, under different coins. And people actually buy some coins and they check their account and it's gone down. And then it's gone up and it's gone down. They're like, I just bought some money. Why is it going up and down? I'm confused. So actually, companies had to adjust that to actually show them a fixed rate. So you bought £21, you have £21. And it might go up very slowly, but you won't see high like up and down all the time, like you see a blockchain approach. people hate uncertainty. So I think, unfortunately, I think fixed price is not going to go away anytime soon, just because of how humans are. So I think risk management and basically factoring uncertainty and basically overcharging sometimes is going to be the only way. But it makes it profitable in a way as well. But again, a lot of averages, you should average out eventually.
I unfortunately agree that fixed price is not going to go away soon. The only problem is it works for mature industries, right? You could say that we've been redecorating bathrooms as you want to do, probably for thousands of years, although using different technology probably, but this is a very young industry, right? The industry is like 60, 70 years old, which means we don't know how to be predictable. So that's why it, for now, is not the good model, I think.
Yeah, but I wasn't using the metaphor to say software development is like redesigning bathrooms. Just that as a customer, I really like fixed price.
Yeah, wait until he delivers, right? He hasn't started yet.
Okay, I'm going to stop this here
Yeah, just one last thing.
because I'm afraid we're going to solve it. I don't want to solve fixed price. Then I wouldn't have a job. So there is no solution, unfortunately. But you need us really good consultants. Okay, I have a question. There are very detailed questions here that are specific to specific, very detailed subjects. They're less generic and less panel-oriented. So raise your hand if you think we should make up some more generic questions here for the panel. Raise your hand if you think that. Okay, raise your hand if you think we should ask now the crowd for questions. Okay, so here's a question actually that came up. Dear panel, has any one of you ever owned a Bitcoin?
Yes,
What did you do with it?
I keep it and I own it, and I'm glad.
Under the
And-
pillow?
Sorry?
Under the pillow?
Under the what?
Under the pillow.
Oh, not yet. Actually,
Okay.
you can have Bitcoin under the pillow, right? You put it on the physical drive and you put it on the pillow or under the paper, right? But not yet. I cannot tell where it is because you guys might try to hack it, like
Somewhere.
Scott. Yeah, I know. So like I cannot disclose where I keep it, but yeah, I own it, and I recommend everybody to own some because then it will go up in value and my Bitcoin will be worth more.
We have a guy on our team who has actually got two. So, and he bought them at 400 euros. And I don't know what the current rate is, but sorry. I
Wait.
have a guy on our team who has two Bitcoins. And he's ill all the time, so I'm not sure whether it's very healthy to have a Bitcoin.
But we also have a guy on the team who used to own 100. 100? Yes, 100. And at one night, he was hungry for pizza. and he ordered one pizza, actually, in exchange for his 100 Bitcoins. And he would have been
Wow.
multi-millionaire. So that's really a sad story.
That's
Wow.
buyer's regret for you.
We nag him all the time. For us, it's great.
So that was the most expensive pizza I ever bought.
So I have a question for the panel. Please describe one project where you screwed up completely.
Just one?
Well, one of the biggest ones. Like one of the ones you're truly ashamed to talk about in public. That's what I want to hear about.
And you want us to talk about it in public. Thank you.
Anyone?
I think Scott hasn't talked yet.
No. This is a setup.
I'll start. I
full.
won't describe the project per se, but I'll describe what I did wrong. And it's a project where I'm doing stuff I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm still doing it because I was the only guy stupid enough to raise my hand. So it's taking longer, and I get into this super focus, like I'm working on this, it'll be done soon, I just need a little bit more time. And what I do is that I start ignoring whatever questions the stakeholders have, which is bad. So, and then people get really annoyed, and I start taking even longer, and I work a little bit of nights and a little bit of mornings, and I work way too much on it, and I basically literally wear myself out. And everybody is pissed because they're not getting any information. So then my failure was not informing and not doing stakeholder management, because it'll be done soon, and nobody cares about soon. If I just said, this will be done in 10 weeks, then people would be annoyed and they would go back to work and they'd wait 10 weeks. But I kept going, yeah, it's soon done, I just got to fix a couple of things, and like, oh crap, then this happened, and then on and on. That's my...
Actually, at the start of my career, actually, I had very similar experience of some of my clients, because again, that skill wasn't there from my end. Also, a more recent experience, about 43 years ago, I had a startup that was called AppAct. And basically, I was building a mobile analytics system. And I was completely wrapped in my own mind, kind of building this startup, really excited about it, thinking it's going to be absolutely amazing. And I did not deploy anything. Me and my colleague of mine, literally working through the night on this application. We kept working on it. I was like, no, we've got to add more functionality, more features. And basically, we built like Android at the time as well, BlackBerry plugins, and like all these plugins, all these features. And we never tested it properly with the customers. We never actually got to see the customers properly. We just kind of lived in a bubble for like a year. I worked really hard on it for no good reason. It was really weird. Like, why did we even do that? I think looking back at it, iterate properly. Just release something very small and see if your idea sucks. I've burned a year of my personal life, didn't see my wife properly for something really silly, for no good reason, because I was very excited about building this product. It could have went the other way, but chances are it wouldn't have, because most businesses fail. So I should have iterated properly and analyzed, again, the market space. And project obviously crashed, and nothing really happened with it. No financial loss, thankfully. It was personal time. So that's my kind of biggest, I think, failure. Wasting a lot of personal time on something that didn't plan out at all because I didn't iterate.
I had a story. It's quite a short one. We made automated tests for life insurance calculations, which are quite hard. You have a bunch of parameters and a very difficult calculations. And we made these automated tests, and we made 10,000 of them because we thought, well, that's great, right? And we thought we're safe. So every time the component was adjusted, we would run our automated test suite, and we would be sure that all the premiums that went into production were the right ones, except the reference for the test set was wrong. So it was referencing an empty test set, and it was green every time because it was empty. So we went into production for half a year with very difficult calculations on an empty test set.
So you had bugs in your tests.
Well, no, not in a test. It was just
You were asserting the wrong thing.
It was just a configuration file which was referencing the wrong file, which was empty.
They were bad tests.
And there were 10,000 tests.
10,000
we weren't running them. No, we weren't running them. We were running an empty test.
Yeah, you were running them and asserting on an empty value. They were bad. Well, they had a bug. So that's a huge screw up. I agree. That's great.
Yeah.
That's why you don't test.
We added this test just to say if there aren't any tests, the test will fail anyway.
There was a project that I encountered that was built somewhere else on the globe. I'm not going to say the country. And when they built the project, they built unit tests for everything, right? And we got the code back, and it had 100% code coverage. Have you ever had that? So it had 100% code coverage, and we were wondering how they did that, because that's a lot of work getting to 100%, right? So we checked, and apparently what they did is they ran all the code, and there were no actual asserts in it. So it had 100% code coverage, but there wasn't a single test in the whole code base. So we just gave it back, actually.
Oh, that's a very common thing. If management tells you, we need code coverage. So 2 rules about code coverage. I'll just share that I learned the hard way. Low code coverage means one thing. You know what that is? Beer? What? You're missing tests. High code coverage, meaningless. Okay? Because you don't know the quality of the tests. So only high code coverage with code reviews actually means something. So that's something I learned the hard way too. I actually have a different question. Something that maybe you came here for a conference to learn about new things, new techniques. So let's talk a bit about the future. If, let's say that you're a developer and you want to know what is the thing you should start focusing on now that in the near future is going to be something that's very important to know and to learn. What do you think people should focus on learning now that in the next few years will make them indispensable in some way?
I'm biased, but I'm going to say security. Sorry, guys.
I'm also biased. I don't like security, but you agree. I agree with you.
I think, I come from a very security-specific background where I have a security role and security title, and I think that more and more people in organizations are starting to kind of inherit like various different things to do with security. I don't think, can you hear me? Yeah? Bit more? There we go. Okay. I don't think we can just have a team of security people. Like, security has become too big a task. I think everyone needs to start picking up a small piece of it. And I would actually like to see security people almost diminish and for their responsibilities to like dissolve into the organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, I would say start looking at automating everything. So everything you can, you should automate that because it makes you much faster, it makes you more reliable, it's repeatable. So automate everything that you can automate.
So I got a point there. So what I'm seeing now is that we've had a lot of specialized roles. We had the developer, you had the database guy, and we had the machine learning guy or girl, and we had the statistician. And if you really want to be indispensable, you go deep in two things. And be the person that knows a little bit or quite a bit about two totally different things. And be the person in between and combine those. So for instance, we have people, lots of people know machine learning, they can do algorithms, they can do statistics, and all that stuff, and they can't develop or automate or make a pipeline of data or anything. You have people who know databases, but they have no idea how to move the data from one place to another and make little programs and analytics pieces in between. So combining development with one of those other fields will make you really make you worth a lot of money, basically. I also think machine learning is hot.
I think from my end, I want to really echo that. I think they call it T-shape, basically where you have quite high coverage of different things. It really surprises me if developers don't know things like RIS configuration, like web config files, if you're from .NET background, learning a bit about load balancing, kind of really knowing kind of how that kind of stuff works, I think is really important. I think distributed computing is going to be only on the way up because we're going to distribute more and more stuff. I think with serverless technologies, I know it's a buzzword right now, but message-driven architectures are going to only accelerate. And that stuff is complicated, it can be quite complicated. So I think that's quite important. But I think generally that T-shape, so understanding around, load balancing, configuration, really understanding the whole stack and not just being really narrow-minded, but also going deep. So I think, I read this book by I can't remember his guy's name, but called Deep Work. And it's all about kind of really zoning in on certain areas and becoming an expert in that field. So I really echo what Glenn was saying, really. I think it's really important that you really understand some things that, just pick a topic and really learn it. But at the same time, be enough of a circular person as well. So you can actually lead teams and help and then push everybody, grow everybody. Yeah,
like you're saying, going down to being operations, IT pro, knowing that area and knowing development as well. I've seen too many developers that have no idea how a firewall works. And that is a bad thing. If you're a developer and you have no idea how TCP/IP and ports work, you're missing out.
I agree that it's very important to like specialize in one thing and all the time trying to be better and better at this, but also know about all the other aspects, right? So when you work on the project, like have a lunch with your coworkers, right? For example, when I joined my new team, I invited, like every day I'm having lunch with different person from the team, learning what are they doing, what they think is interesting, and this is like great way to learn. And also like for your overnight projects, I wouldn't really recommend to looking at different technologies and picking stuff to learn next based on what's hot, what's like trending on Twitter. Just find some interesting problem to solve and then find what technology is available to solve this problem. And this is the best way to do it, and this is the best way to learn as well, because just following tutorials, you'll forget about this a year from now. But if you solve some problem that you're like passionate about, you're interested in it, and then you learn technology, by the way, it's like a win-win story.
I'm going to double down and say that the future of development is not just knowing technology anymore. It is knowing and working with people. So I think that the developer of the present, developer of the future, it's not going to be acceptable anymore to be someone who just works alone. Just someone who works in isolation, who works in a specific, maybe there's still going to be pockets of it, but I don't think it's going to be the standard anymore. And people are going to be expected to know more and more about interaction with other people, about knowledge sharing. Whatever the technology is, they will be expected to share knowledge about it, and they will be expected to teach other people about it. So the skills of teaching other people, public speaking, explaining things, anything to do with communication between people and psychology is actually going to be, let's say, the next 10 years is going to be a much, much heavier focus on it, because the world is moving towards, whatever the methodology is, it's going to move towards more knowledge sharing, more communication between people. That's the way I see it right now. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree on communication, and you can actually notice it, especially further in your career you are, because at the beginning, of course, you need to learn how to code, how to do different things, but then there's this like threshold when you notice that your communication skills and actually working with people is much, much more crucial, and this is usually the real reason why a lot of projects are failing. It's not the technology, it's like the people.
Okay, so do you have any interesting questions you want to ask the panel? I mean, I'm kind of out of ideas. We could ask the crowd. We could come up with an interesting question here. There are a bunch of very detailed questions.
For those with questions.
I can cover one from here, but I think the questions here are very, like only one person could answer them. So I think it's going to be less interesting panel if we just answer the questions here. Any questions you'd like to ask the panel? Oh, someone is raising their hand. Okay, you just have to really, really shout. Are you coming over here?
Yeah, coming up and get a mic.
Oh, and chocolate. Chocolate, he wants chocolate.
He's going chocolate. He's getting chocolate.
Question is about for Sanders.
There you go, sir.
Actually, what's the story behind the chickens and the pigs?
So the question was, what's the deal with the chickens and the pigs, right? So there is a cartoon about a chicken and a pig starting a restaurant. And then one of them asks, it's the chicken, of course. No, it's the pig that asks, so how should we call it? And then the chicken says, how about ham and eggs, right? And so it's a very different perspective for the pig and for the chicken, right? So in stand-up meetings in agile projects, it's basically the idea that the pigs who are in it with their meat actually get to say something and the chickens don't. So that's basically the short explanation about the story about chicken and the pigs.
Horrible analogy that has somehow come into the Scrum world. The chickens and the pigs, there's nothing better than calling people pigs. I think as a good means of communication, first of all, we're the pigs, and hey, chickens, come in and you can listen to our stand-up meeting. I think that idea was flawed in the
Very
first
much
place.
flawed,
It's a good idea, really bad execution.
You're not allowed to speak. You're just a chicken.
There you
way,
go.
way to go.
Shut up, chicken. Just imagine someone telling that in some way.
Well, actually, I was in a meeting last week, a stand-up meeting, that was actually said to somebody from the business, and she wasn't allowed to talk, and she ran out mad. So,
Way to make friends.
There's one good question from the audience.
There's one good question.
There is very good question from the audience. If you were to start a new business with the current team on stage and the purpose to be rich very quickly, what would that be?
Blockchain.
Blockchain. Blockchain. We're going to start a new company. We're going to call it Inferium. It's kind of like Ethereum, but it's going to be inferior to Ethereum. It's going to have, nobody knows what I'm talking about. I think that's why it's going to work. Everyone's going to invest. No one will know. Inferium, I like it. Give that man $100.
This one is actually good for you. This one is actually a good one. How would you encourage your people and teammates to try something different, to look from the different perspective? So if you want to get your teammates to look at something from another perspective, what will you do?
I'll try.
Yeah, it has your name on it, so yeah.
Oh. How do you encourage people to accept new skills? To what? To be challenged?
Try something different.
Well, first of all, it depends if they're my coworker or that I lead them, they're part of my team. But either way, I would have a one-on-one meeting with the person, and I would talk to them one-on-one specifically about one specific skill. I would check whether it's a skill that they're interested in, or I would come up with an idea, and we would sit together and we would decide together what is the thing that they would like to get better at. It doesn't have to be anything to do specifically with the current coding challenge or anything like that. It could be anything. I actually had a team member who really wanted to become much more visible and do public speaking. So we created a set of challenges for him, basically by giving him ideas and challenges to go speak at conferences and speak more inside the company. And basically we put it as part of his schedule to have more and more tasks to do with it. So I think the first step for that was to look at what is the person passionate about. And one question that I like to ask is, on one-on-one meetings with team members, if you had 6 months paid to do whatever you wanted in this company, what would you do? Right? You could do whatever you want. 6 months, we pay you. I'm talking literally about, I'm not talking about go spend time with family and kids. I'm literally talking about what is the thing you're passionate about. Is there an open source project you're interested in? Is there a specific hobby? Would you just sit and learn to play guitar? What is it the thing that you're really, really interested in? And usually from there, the conversation goes into something. There's a twinkle in their eye. So that's from their perspective. There's the other perspective, which is if I think that they're missing an important skill, I'm going to attack the idea from how is it helping them to learn that skill? Or how is it hurting them that they don't know the skill right now? And we would have an honest one-on-one conversation. Not always is it an easy conversation, but it's an important conversation. There's an interesting book called Crucial Conversations. It's a book literally about having complicated conversations. And he talks about how do you enter these situations? How do you handle yourself in there? What do you look out for? How do you make sure things don't blow up, etc.? So it's an interesting book to read, and I recommend it. That's my view.
And on top of that, it's also useful to just do something cool and learning something by yourself, and then like showing your coworkers, hey, like look what I did overnight and how cool is that, right? And then like, some other coworkers will be more convinced to do the same.
Yeah, I like that because there's different aspects. Because in some, you're the manager, you're the team leader, and you want them to go somewhere place else. But other times it's just that you want your team to do something, to go in a direction and try. Perhaps, I don't know, tried something mad like security or something on their site. And basically it's just by leading by example then. Going forward, like, here's what I did, it works this way, and having people pick that up.
Yeah, but as your own manifesto, Roy, said, there's not just one style of management, right? So you also have to think hard on the situation. What's holding someone back? Sometimes it's just someone who really needs a helping hand, and then you should offer him that to make the first steps. Sometimes it's someone who needs to know the higher goal, and that will get him running, right? So each situation is different, and you just have to listen to the individual story. So that's your one-on-one. That's right.
Just a different perspective as well on the question. Basically, if you're trying to influence your manager or a boss to try something different or push through new technology, basically, I'm talking now from experience in terms of managing up and also people trying to basically give me new ideas. Personally, what I like to see is the fact that a team member in my team done their homework. So they come to me with an idea. Basically, they think, I'm thinking about this. I know you have worries about X, Y, and Z. I've been kicking this idea around. I'm not sure about it yet, but it can do X, Y, and Z. It might help us with this, right? So how about we have a look at like do a POC or basically do a demo in next week or so, right? And that's great. You're getting a buy-in from your boss. Don't just go on it alone. Then come in one day, slap it on their desk and go, ha-ha, implement this now. And be like, oh, screw this company, I'm leaving. Because they're not taking my idea on board, right? It's a journey. So you got to make sure you kind of get a buy-in with your boss and make sure that, because for them it can be quite scary. It can be quite scary to go for a big change because they have business as usual, operations. It's important that you get that buy-in, explain it, kind of plant a seed and work with them. Not manipulative, but as in just literally go on the journey with them, work through it, and do your homework. It's nothing worse than coming to your boss with an idea and saying, here's an idea, and then basically you can find 55 flaws in it, and it was never a good idea in the first place, because it does come down in terms of like, why didn't you do your homework a little bit? I know it's a little bit harsh, maybe in a way, but basically the key thing is take your boss on a journey with you, understand their problems, and try to solve them with your boss. If you do that, you're gonna go so far. It's unbelievable.
I'm touched. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, I have a question for the panel. What was your worst job?
Construction worker right after high school.
Why was it the worst job?
It was hard. It was like 10 hours a day, and I was working with like people from the mountains, like in Poland. They're like, very strong people, and they were like overloading this, I don't know how you call this in English, touch key. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like they were overloading it so much that after a week, this thing got broken because they put too much of the concrete in it, and you have to like, drive this. It was so hard to like get used to that. But, guess what? After a week, I got used to that, and it's actually very similar to software project. When you get to a new project, like first week, it's rough. Like you have no idea what you're doing. You're like, is this right? Is it wrong? And then everybody is thinking, oh, you suck. Like this guy, he's just new. He doesn't know anything, right? But after some time, right, you need to give it a time. But I remember this construction worker job.
So that was a tough job.
It was
but
really tough.
Does not sound like it was your worst job, because you learned a lot and you actually became better at it. So why was it the worst job? Because programming is hard as well. You also work 10 hours with people from the mountains.
But it's not really miserable. When, in programming, when something goes bad, I just go home and take a nap. It wasn't an option down there.
Oh, no rest. That's why it was the worst.
No rest, long hours, and a lot of like, pressure. So, but that was a great experience, because I learned how to adapt. So that was great and worst. I would never do it again, I think.
So I had my worst job. It's not a bad job per se, but it's the lowest one of mine. I worked in the cashier at a supermarket, and it was boring as fuck. Because you're sitting there, and they had it open until 10 or 11 in the evenings. Nobody goes shopping at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. You're an idiot. So you're sitting there, and there's 10 cashiers, 4 of them open, there's nobody around, and you're not allowed to do anything else than just sit there and wait.
You should have come work with me at this construction.
I would work at the construction. I also had another job, which sounds like it's really bad, but
Which one was worse? Just do the worst one.
The worst
Just
one was
choose
the
one.
cashier. Yeah, the
Okay.
worst one was the cashier.
Okay, just so you know, it's a fun exercise I do usually with the classes that I teach. I ask what is the worst job, and we try to find common patterns, things that repeat, and then we try to see, does that exist in our job today for people that we manage? Interesting. Okay, please continue.
My worst job was a very strange one. It was for one day, because I quit straight away. It was the worst job I've ever had. It was telesales job. So literally, I'll pick up a phone, right, and I'll call old people trying to sell them wills. So you're gonna die soon. Do you want to take out a will? It was literally people pick up and they'd be like, "Sorry, honey, can you repeat that? I'm just having my tea," and it was just soul destroying. I walked out after like 2 hours.
That's just horrible.
It is horrible.
Okay, so let's try to understand the pattern. Why was it the worst job? Is it the phone calls? Is it the fact that you tell people the worst news in the world? Is it what was the worst thing about it?
Because you're stuck in the room on the phone, it's so impersonal, and you telling them they're gonna die. So it sucks for you, and it sucks for them, and nobody's happy. Why am I doing it?
Mr. Bad News, basically, right? Mr.
That's
Bad
right,
News.
that's right.
Okay, so there's no bright future in your work. It's all the way down. Okay, understood.
Yeah, I think I have a similar pattern. One of the worst jobs was I had to make an internal audit department, and there were all these people in the company who had a lot of drive and a lot of passion to execute their jobs, and we would come in and just criticize them. So that was just very personal, certainly the first round around, because we weren't, well, it wasn't the habit yet. So people got very angry, but also there were very big vulnerabilities, which actually got people fired. And that drained all the energy out. To just have colleagues and tell them, well, what you're doing and it's not very safe and you're doing it wrong. There's nothing collaborative about it, and there's nothing...
It's all judgment.
Yes, it's very bad.
So in your job, you would come in and you would tell people to do their job differently, and then they would be angry. So you were a consultant. Just kidding. Okay, anyone else?
Are there any more answers for the worst job in the world?
Hey guys, I would get you because we are done. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you outside.
Yeah.